everyone for joining tonight. I really appreciate it. Um, I'm Zach Spicer. I'm a member of the consultant team for the council composition and ward boundary review project, and I'm very glad to be with you tonight. And what we're going to be doing tonight is just going through some of the preliminary options. I'll speak for about 15 minutes, but tonight is not about me. It is really about you. This is the final open house. We opted to do this virtually, given that the first two were in person. One in Beamsville last week, and the other in Jordan last night. This is a virtual session meant to be accessible to all those who weren't able to join for the past two sessions. With that said, this is not the end of the conversation. This is an opportunity to get feedback, share your thoughts, ask questions, request clarification on any of the options here. And there's also an opportunity to share your thoughts on the Speak Up Lincoln website. We have some background material there if you're interested in diving a bit more deeply into any of the options or some of the background on the ward boundary system here in Lincoln. But there's also a survey there as well. So if you wanted to fill that out as well, we would really appreciate it. Share it with your friends, your colleagues, your neighbors, your family. We would definitely appreciate that as well. Sorry, let's get this going. So we're near the conclusion of this particular project. We started in December of 2024. We had an opportunity to speak to all of the members of council and several members of the senior staff team here with the town. We prepared a series of background papers, including a preliminary options report, which is on the Speak Up Lincoln website. We are right now in the public engagement phase. And as I mentioned, this is the last of the open house sessions, but it's certainly not the last opportunity to have your say. So feel free to listen tonight, absorb information, ask clarifications, tell us what you like, what you don't like, and we can take that back and build that into our final recommendations, which are going to be coming to council in June. Now, the options that you are going to see tonight, we're not necessarily looking for you to endorse any option over the other. Adjustments can be made to all of these options. These are different alternatives that could be put in place for Lincoln. So you will see that there are some options here that might look a bit familiar. So we have a couple of options here that have a four-ward system that would elect 8 councillors for a total council of 9, including the mayor, who is elected at large. Some of the options may look unfamiliar, given that part of our mandate here is also to review council composition. So one of the questions that I would like you to consider tonight is whether 9 is the right number for council. Should there be more? Should there be less? The other question is whether each of the wards should elect 2 councillors each, or should the town move to a system where there is only 1 councillor for each of the wards? Some of the options that you see tonight will provide variations of that. So we have 2 options that are intended to elect a single councillor for each of the wards. We have options as well that would provide a reduction in the overall size of council. So while some of these options may seem unfamiliar at first, that's not necessarily a good reason to dismiss them out of hand. But let's have a conversation about them. Let's take that information back so we can build a system that works well for Lincoln. A quick word before we begin tonight about the legislative framework. What is in the scope of this review and what is not. Legislatively, the minimum council size in Ontario is 5, one of whom has to be the head of council, so the mayor who is elected at large. Beyond that, the legislation provides a lot of flexibility for municipalities to pick the correct size of council for them, and provides a lot of flexibility over how those council members will be elected. They can be elected either at large or in a ward system. You could have multiple members who are elected from a single ward, much like Lincoln has today. What is not in review is the office of the mayor, so the mayor's position, or the regional councilor. Both would remain in place. What we're focused on is how you are electing councilors and from what geographical configurations you are doing so. So let's begin with the current system. And this is an opportunity for me to also introduce some of the guiding principles in which we use to design ward systems. These guiding principles are given to us from a 1991 Supreme Court decision called the Carter case. The Carter case essentially sets out that this is not a purely mathematical exercise, that it's not purely about getting a balance of people within each electoral boundary. That's certainly one of the factors that would be taken into consideration in a exercise like this, but there are other factors that need to be balanced out. Another one is respecting geographical features and defining natural and infrastructure boundaries. This essentially means the boundary markers themselves. The boundary markers ought to be recognizable. So running down major roadways, rail lines, waterways, right? You wouldn't necessarily want to bring a boundary marker through someone's backyard, right? Or through a field or something that is not easily recognizable to residents. Another is communities of interest, meaning that where possible, established communities of interest in neighborhoods ought not to be fragmented. So they ought to be kept together within a single ward. Now, with that said, in a perfect world, all of these principles would be held in balance. But you can see how there could potentially be some tension between them. So keeping a community of interest together may mean accepting population disparities elsewhere within the map. Our goal as a consultant team is to get these principles as balanced as possible. And some of the options that you will see tonight have leaned stronger into certain principles over others, which is something that I will point out as well. So let's turn our attention first to the existing wards. This is the map you will see on the screen right now. A 4-ward system in which residents elect 2 councilors for each ward for a total council size of 9, including the mayor, who is elected at large. Turning to the current population figures, you can see that there is some variation in the population. Every single ward is within what we would refer to as the acceptable range of population variation, meaning around 25% of the average population of each of the wards today, which is currently 6,775 people. So 25% variation on either side of that. Most of all the wards are within that range currently, but there is some disparity that needs to be pointed out. The disparity between the largest ward and the smallest ward is approaching 3,000 people. So that's Ward 1 and Ward 4. As we move towards 2035, some of those disparities increase. So the difference between Ward 1 and Ward 4 grows substantially to the point where there's a difference of over 5,000 people between wards 1 and 4. The question is there a better system for Lincoln? One of our initial tasks was to see if a ward boundary and council composition review was necessary. Based on these population discrepancies alone, we said that this was a necessary process. The question now is there a system that would better serve Lincoln? So let's look at some potential options. The first 3 options tonight are familiar in the sense that they all present a 4-ward system that would elect a total of 8 councilors. The first option here, option 1, is a 4-ward system that would elect 2 councilors for each of the wards. Beamsville, as you will notice, as the largest population center, is divided into three different wards in this option. It also has a very large rural ward that would span almost the entirety of the municipality itself. Ward 4 has the Prudhoe settlement area and most of Vineland contained within it. Using current population figures, this option provides for pretty good population parity, with two of the wards being within the optimal population range, meaning plus or minus 5% around the average, which again is 6,775 people. As the town moves towards the 2036 election, some of this parity weakens, with Ward 3 and 4 moving outside of the acceptable range of population variation. The difference between both grows substantially and sets at almost 6,000 people. Moving on to option 2. This has a similar configuration with a very large rural ward, and Beamsville again divided into three different wards. This configuration provides for much more balanced population distribution. In 2025, three of the wards would be within the optimal range, and all would be within the acceptable range moving towards 2036. The discrepancy between the largest and smallest wards in this instance is about 2,200 people. Option 3 provides a somewhat familiar version of a somewhat familiar alternative to the current system, using wards that run from the north to the south, with a carve out around Vineland in Ward 3. As you can see, as we move towards 2036, this is an option that privileges future population growth. All of the wards, as we move towards 2036, are all within the optimal population range, with one ward outside the range currently. This ward, Ward 4, is substantially below the average. This ward would only have 2,757 residents, substantially below the average of 6,775. This ward, however, jumps right into the optimal range as we move towards 2036, thanks largely to development within the Prudhoe settlement area. Option 4 begins to depart from what is familiar to Lincoln. This is an option that has three wards, each of which would elect two councilors. This would give the town a total council size of 7, including the mayor, who would continue to be elected at large. This would be a reduction of 2 councilors. This option is less familiar to the residents of Lincoln, but it does provide for very good population parity, both now and in the future. Using 2025 population figures, each of the wards is within the optimal population range of 5%. The average population for each of the wards climbs to over 9,000 residents, meaning that each councillor would have a substantially larger population in which they would be responsible for. Option 5 and option 6 provide very different configurations than what the town has currently. Each of these options are ones where each ward would be represented by a single councillor. I should mention as well, the existing system, as well as options 1, 2, and 3, could also be represented by a single councillor for each of the wards. 4 wards plus the mayor would meet the legislative floor. Option 4, with only 3 wards, would not. It would fall below 1 if each of those wards were to elect a single councillor. Option 5 and option 6 give us a view of what that would mean and what that could look like if you had a familiar council size, but you had each councillor representing a single ward. So option 5 employs 6 wards. And as you can see, it does provide for fairly balanced population, both now and in the future, with 3 of the wards coming in the optimal population range as the town moves towards 2036. Option 6 provides an 8 ward system with 8 councillors for a total council size of 9, including the mayor, who will continue to be elected at large. Again, pretty good population parity, with the exception of Ward 7, which exits the acceptable range of population variation moving towards 2036. Now, when we look at each of these options as compared to the guiding principles, many of them hold up quite well. With option 2 and option 4 performing the best and meeting most of the guiding principles. So, what I want to do now is to turn the meeting over to you. We are quite interested in getting feedback from you. Again, we're not necessarily interested in you endorsing one particular option over another. We're interested in your feedback. Are these natural configurations of settlement areas? Do the wards make sense to you? Is 6 or 4 or 4 wards, 3 wards, 6 wards, or 8 wards more suitable for you? Do you think there's one option that has significant strength over another? Should each of the wards continue to elect 2 councillors, or is a single councillor preferred? So this is an opportunity for you to give us your feedback. Tell us what you think, what works, what doesn't, or also ask questions for clarification. Anything that you think isn't necessarily clear that you would like me to dive into a bit more. I'm more than happy to do that. And again, this is also not your last opportunity to give us your thoughts. We also have the survey, which is on the Speak Up Lincoln website. All that feedback will be taken into account when we make our final recommendations towards council in June. And just noticing the chat, David Brown has asked a great question here, something that I should have mentioned earlier. Are all the options proposing part-time councillors and mayors? And so the full-time, part-time distinction is an important one. Usually, this is a distinction that is that's made based upon salary. The pay of councillors is something that is separate from this particular review, but I think there is a understanding that each of these positions would continue much the same way that they are done today, with a similar level of pay. And so all to say, yes, these are considered to be part-time positions. Thank you very much for that, David. I appreciate it. I'd be happy to answer any further questions if anyone has about any of the particular options. I'm happy to flip back to any of the maps as well if there's anything there that you think you would like to sort of check out, or if there's anything you would like me to elaborate on perhaps as well. I think we're primarily using the chat tonight, if I'm correct, Julie. Yeah.
Yeah, so I've let the participants know, the attendees, that feel free to put your questions into the chat function, and you're happy to answer any of those questions. So if anybody is having any difficulty, just please let me know. But yeah.
And I'm also happy to ask some questions of those who are attending. I think one of the things that we got a question here from this exercise only relates to council makeup. It does not address any administrative organization. I think, David, you're referring to staff and different departments within the town. If that is so, that is correct. This would only relate to the composition of council and the ward boundaries themselves, not any internal organization within the town itself. Appreciate that, David. Those are important points of clarification. So thank you for that. One of the things I was mentioning is, one of the important questions that we were discussing in the other open house sessions was, should the system continue where you elect two counselors for each of the wards? Is this something that you find beneficial? Would you prefer moving to a system where um, each of the wards would have a single counselor? As David has pointed out, they would continue to operate in a very similar way in a kind of part-time fashion. So with that in mind, do we think a single member ward is superior to a two-member ward, vice or vice versa? Um, the other important question that we were looking at, and we've gotten into some discussion about this last night and last week with the session in Beamsville, is what is the right overall size for council? Like, is nine the right number? So, with that, Eric asks a question here. Can you comment on how these recommendations are being considered against the current future Niagara regional governance structure? Great question, Eric. I know that regional governance is something that is top of mind for a lot of folks. When we look across the province, we can see a series of upper tier governance changes happening. I don't know if you've been noticing what's happening in Simcoe County. The county council there is planned to be reduced down to 16 from 32 members. So some substantial changes. What happens here in Lincoln would not have an effect on any potential governance changes at Niagara Region. I should mention as well that I'm not aware of any planned governance changes happening there. I'm not sure if there's anything planned with the provincial government or anything that's being drawn up internally. With that said, the composition of council and the ward boundaries locally are something that the town of Lincoln can independently set and adjust on its own without approval from the region. Um, Lincoln, as of right now, would continue to have the mayor sit on regional council and elect a regional councilor. Any changes to that structure would have to happen at the regional level. So I definitely appreciate that question, Eric, and it's an important question of clarification. Another question here, to what extent will the final report take into consideration the benefits, be they financial or otherwise, of each of the options? Um, that's an important question. So certainly, there are financial implications of considering a system that would have fewer members of council. So, two of the options that we have looked at tonight would create a smaller council. And I should mention as well the current system, as well as options one, two, and three that have four wards, could also include single member wards. So that could create a council of five, which again is the legislative floor. Moving to a council that would be smaller in number would certainly have financial implications if the salaries of the mayor and and other members of council weren't adjusted, which is something that council would be free to do. And so it's tough for us as a consultant team uh, to comment on what the financial implications would be. What we can say is that none of the options that we've explored at this stage increase the size of council. So I think that you could expect either the same amount of costs or a slight reduction. But with that said, the pay of council is separate from this particular exercise, but that's something that I definitely appreciate you asking. Jane and David here said, yes, interested in one counselor per ward with a council of five. Can't see the chat, so I did not realize I need to give you a count. Okay, thank you for that, and I think that is something that is important to recognize as well. That what would a system of having one counselor for each of the wards look like? So Right now, you have two members, and I don't want to. I want to just premise some of my comments to say this is not directed at any particular member of council or an evaluation of council as a whole or anything like that. But just thinking theoretically, from a sort of the sort of pros and cons of one member versus two. Um, from a from a two-member system, some of the benefits there are that there is always someone there to fill in, right? So if you have a part-time council, oftentimes they have outside employment, right? They either have a job, or they're a business owner, or they are retired. They have some other occupation or profession outside of being a member of council. So having two of them helps to pick up some of the slack. I guess you could say if someone were unavailable because of work commitments or on holiday or um, uh, unable to fulfill their duties because of illness or something along those lines, residents could have some degree of confidence that there would be someone there to respond to the phone calls and emails, stuff like that. Um, with that said, on the pro side of having a single counselor is that there's more of a direct accountability link, right? It's possible with having two members for each of the wards that passengers could essentially uh, be created, right? That one counselor can handle the bulk of the constituency work when the other could ignore phone calls, perhaps, or not do as much, right? It's often not equally shared, but there is oftentimes some agreement between the members of council to handle certain calls over others and to share the workload equitably, right? So it is possible for them to have an agreement like that. Moving to a single member constituency would create a more of a direct accountability that if calls are not being answered, if requests for service or information are not being fulfilled, you know who is responsible for that. You also know who is responsible for raising certain issues on your behalf at council. With that said, if you are unsatisfied with the performance of that member of council, you have the option to vote against them when election time comes. So it's a little bit easier to decipher who is responsible for what within a single member constituency. So there are some pros and cons. It also, too, if you move to a system where there are more councillors representing single wards, that they have a smaller geographic area to care for essentially and to respond to. So that could potentially even out some of the constituency work. So hopefully I answered that. But if you like me to clarify anymore, I'm more than happy to. David asks a question here. Once council decides on the option that they wish to pursue, what's the process to implement the change, and would the new boundaries be in effect for the next municipal election in 2026? That's a fantastic question. Um, yes. So if council were to select one of the options, and I should mention as well that the status quo remains an option available to council. So if they were to select a different ward boundary system, they would need to pass a bylaw. That bylaw would need to be in place by December 31st, 2025. Nominations for the 2026 election open in January. Julie may have a better handle on the exact date. It's escaping me right now. I'm sure it's circled in on the calendar somewhere in her office. That's the start of the busy season for her and the clerk's office. But all to say, from our perspective, the bylaw would need to be in place by the end of 2025. Our intention is to give the public as much time as possible to understand the new ward boundaries if those are selected. So we are reporting back to council in June. That gives ample amount of time for those who are considering potentially running for council to understand where the ward boundary lines are going to be. All to say, yes, this should be in effect for the next election. Eric asked me to go to the evaluation screen again. Certainly, I'd be happy to. And if you have any questions about the evaluation criteria for any of the options, I'm more than happy to to go through that. We are fortunate that we don't see a lot of no's on the screen, including the existing system. As I mentioned, the existing system has some strengths, right? The wards are recognizable, they are long-standing. Yep, some message here from Julie. December 31st must be finalized before the 2026 municipal election. So the current system has a lot of strengths, right? The ward boundaries are familiar, they are long-standing. For the most part, they run along recognizable boundary markers. There are some areas where the boundary markers depart from recognizable roadways, but for the most part, they are recognizable with the exception of certain areas. Where we find that there is some challenges is in future population growth. We know that the growth is coming to Lincoln like it is to most places across Southern Ontario. We know that in a lot of municipalities, this growth is going to be uneven. So there are certain spots that are going to grow quicker than others. So with that said, let me just turn my attention to the chat again. I see that David has a question. Can the decision of council be appealed? Does an appeal prevent the new ward boundaries from being implemented before the 2026 election? So if a bylaw is passed to put new ward boundaries in place, that bylaw can be appealed to the OLT. An appeal wouldn't necessarily prevent them from being implemented for the 2026 election. Part of the rationale for introducing this to council in June is that it provides ample time for anyone who wishes to appeal the bylaw to be heard by the OLT. The hope is that that appeal would be heard within 6 weeks, which would still provide enough time for the bylaw, whether it's depending on the decision of the OLT, of course, to be implemented by December 31st, 2025, so that the system could be in place by the 2026 election. With that said, I can't predict what the OLT would say and what the appeal would be and what the option selected by council would be, but all to say that an appeal period has been built into the project time. So definitely appreciate that, David. Yeah, so definitely appreciate all these fantastic questions. I'm not sure if anyone has, I'm sorry, the Eric one that I was screening. Sorry about that. What source is being used for the growth numbers? So Watson's and Associates is a land economist firm, so they do a lot of planning, population forecasts. They are working with the town's planning department to look at things like approved developments, building permits, things of that nature. I'm not a land use planner myself, so I am going to shy away from getting into the sort of technical elements of the growth forecast. But there is a section of the preliminary options report which does provide some technical analysis on that. What I can say for now, Eric, because I know that this is a unsatisfactory answer for you, but is it the population forecasts are created in conjunction with the planning department based upon expected growth, things that are approved and things that are within the pipeline. With that said, it comes with a caveat that growth forecasts are forecasts. And we do have some question marks around building right now, particularly with some of the decisions that are being made to the south of us with tariffs on steel and aluminum and other important building materials. So with that said, some of those numbers could change, but those are based upon our best estimates of the planning staff at Watson's and the planning staff here with the town. But that is a fantastic question. I would also point you towards the technical analysis in the preliminary options report, which we will also emphasize in the final report and the commentary around any of the recommended options for council. we know, of course, that growth is a hot topic in Lincoln, especially around some of those targeted growth areas, especially Prudhome's and areas around Beamsville. So it's natural that folks would have some questions around some of the growth projections and figures going forward. So thank you very much for that, Eric. I appreciate it. I don't know if there's any of the options that people favor over others, or if there's anyone wants to share any thoughts on um, the size of council or any of those issues as well. Eric, so thank you. Significant economic headwinds you've identified in federal government resource and growth numbers suggest these numbers are very much in flux. I appreciate it's a moving target. And yeah, I will absolutely concede that point that the forecasts are forecasts, and I think it's more challenging now than ever for planners to sort of build out some of those figures. I'm not a planner myself, so I'm going to shy away from some of the complexity around it. But my impression is that there is some challenges getting a handle on some of these external factors, which means some of these numbers could be adjusted. Will the final report and recommendation, when will the final report and recommendation be made to council? That's a question from David. It's in June. I'm going to let May Julie comment on the exact dates. I know you have a meeting circle in the calendar, I believe.
Yeah, it's anticipated for June 23rd, coming to the committee of the whole.
Excellent. And so that report as well, I believe will be appearing on the Speak Up Lincoln website. Julie can correct me if I'm wrong, but it'll be made. Yeah, so it'll be made public as well.
That's correct.
Yeah, so the residents of Lincoln will also be able to, who prepares the report and makes a final recommendation. So that is the consultant team. I believe Julie as well. There'll be some staff commentary around the report as well. Correct me if I'm wrong.
That is correct. It's mostly coming from the consultants, but it will be put forward by staff in collaboration with the consultants for council to make that decision.
Yep. And the final report is public as well, so you will have an opportunity to review it. And the consultant team is always available to answer questions as well. If there's items in there that you'd like some clarification on. What assessment category considered the diverse nature of each ward? Each ward seems quite distinct: residential, agricultural, industrial. That is a fantastic question, Eric. The communities of interest principle asks us to pay attention and respect the characteristics of each of the neighborhoods and each of the wards. All right, so communities of interest can be defined in a number of ways. It can be a geographic settlement area, so a neighborhood that is higher density urban, or a neighborhood that is lower density suburban, or a rural community. A community of interest in certain areas could be a student community. So, for instance, if we were to do something like this up the road in Hamilton per se, the students at McMaster and Mohawk College could be considered a community of interest as well. Cultural communities could also be considered a community of interest if you're working in a place that has a very high concentration or density of population of members of a certain ethnic or religious community. So the communities of interest principle is essentially saying that we need to keep these communities together where it is possible. And as I mentioned before, some of these principles are going to be in tension with each other. For instance, keeping a identifiable communities of interest, a community of interest together may mean accepting population disparities elsewhere. And it is defensible to say that a reasonable disparity may be accepted to keep a long-standing neighborhood with deep roots, shared values together if there is a slight disparity elsewhere. We make certain trade-offs federally and provincially as well. So we have certain ridings in Canada that have half the population of others. Those are remote, rural. They have significant population disparities. We accept those because of the differences between the type of communities that are there. So with that said, there could be a bit of tension between them. That is one of the things that we are hoping to get out of this particular process. The early stage of this project was really devoted to trying to understand each of the communities within Lincoln. I am fortunate to visit Lincoln quite frequently, but I do not live here. So we wanted to make sure that we were understanding as much as possible about the nature of each of those communities, each of those places, understanding the roots, community, the culture, the values, and the connections between those places and others. So I hope that answers your question, Eric. But that's where you would see the diversity of each award reflected in the guiding principles. Well, thank you very much, David. Appreciate your questions tonight.
Thanks, David.
Um, yeah, I'm not sure if anyone has any other questions. I'm more than happy to answer any of the questions or clarify anything that I'm able to. I don't know if anyone also has any commentary on any of the options or any of the ward configurations. The last couple nights we've had the poster boards out, and folks have been kind of telling us, we like this ward, we don't like that one, or I'm worried about reducing the size, or uh, single members sounds a little or makes me a bit uneasy. It's natural to have some of those feelings where and we would love to hear some of that too. If some of the options to you are unpalatable, we're certainly not going to take offense to it. You can let us know that, but that certainly helps us kind of narrow the scope of options that we would be considering and recommending to council. But it also helps council make a decision eventually, right? That the feedback that they are receiving from you in sessions like this, but also the survey as well, is really helpful to them as they begin to deliberate. This is not a process that has been done frequently in the past in Lincoln, so this is a big opportunity to potentially rethink some of the governance structures here within the town. So there is a window of opportunity here, and I think that some of the feedback that you have is particularly helpful to those who are making the final decision. With that said, I know I've thrown a lot of information at you tonight, and it's natural to say, you know what, I want to kind of take this back, think it through. The survey is a great opportunity for some of that as well. Seeing option 2 and 4, the only two that have all of the evaluation criteria met on a higher rating, is there still more options that can or would be developed? That's a great question, Eric. So there is still time to adjust any of the options. So these are not final, and we're not necessarily saying I need you to pick 1/3 or 3/6. If there's components of the various options that you think are working well, some that you think are not working so well, some that you think could be strengthened, and that could mean adjusting a line. That could mean saying this one needs to be thrown out. This one is good, but this word really needs to encompass that community or that community. We can take all of that feedback back. Generally, the preliminary options before they turn into final options undergo some degree of adjustment, either to strengthen population parity or to account for a community of interest that hadn't been considered prior. There are good rationales for adjusting some of the options, but the main goal is that those adjustments are made to strengthen the guiding principles, or to more precisely strengthen how those options meet the guiding principles. So all to say, Eric, if you think that there are ones that are stronger than others, let us know. If you think that there are weaker ones that need to be tossed or ways to improve some of them, that is important information that we can take back. Jane David saying increasing the number of wards, that's something that I would support. I appreciate that, David. That's important feedback as well. Yeah, there are a few options that take us down in size, and some that keep the composition at the same level. So appreciate that.
And just to note that the survey is still available until 11:59 p.m. on May 23rd. So there's still lots of time to fill out that survey.
Yeah, and I'll just mention too, if you have friends, family, neighbors, folks who you were working with, encourage them to complete the survey as well. If you have like a local neighborhood group or a community Facebook group or something like that, I think worth sharing the survey, and encouraging others to check out the website, complete the survey. That'd be great. Are all the option slides also available to review with survey information? They absolutely are. Thank you for that. The survey has the maps and the population figures and the evaluation criteria on it. Each of the options and the population figures and the evaluation criteria and a commentary around the strengths and weaknesses of each of the options is also available in the preliminary options report, which is on the Speak Up Lincoln website. Also on the website is a series of discussion papers, which give you a bit of background on how these processes work, what the relevant legislation is. Explains a little bit more about the Carter case if you are curious about some of the guiding principles and our initial evaluation of the existing system, and a bit of a description about how the principles would be applied to strengthen the existing system, and some information on the process and some comparative information as well. If you're curious about how the town here stacks up against other municipalities locally in terms of council size, that is there, as well as how it compares to municipalities of a similar size across the province. You can see where Lincoln lines up there as well. So I hope that information is useful to you as well. But all of that information is there if you want to review it and then complete the survey. Also, encourage your friends and family. It's a dark, rainy night. It's a great opportunity to to complete a survey. If you have a couple of minutes, we'd certainly appreciate it.
Good opportunity to advise everybody that there's lots of information on our Speak Up Lincoln.ca under ward boundary review. So there's still the whiteboard video that's available, as well as the papers that are available, the all of the information there, as well as the presentation and the survey. So lots of information there. There's also the key milestones, as Zach has highlighted, and we will be sure to have a link to the public report that will be on our agenda for June 23rd, and that will be published before the meeting date.
Yeah, and one other thing I would also mention as well. Some of the options here, create some changes for those who would be elected to serve this particular community, right? So, some changes and distinctions there, going from a two council ward to a one council ward, how that would affect the workload of councillors. It might be worthwhile as well if you were curious about, what the job is like, what does the workload look like, what does the time commitment look like. To also reach out to your members of council and ask them, would moving from a system where each of the wards has about 6,700 people to a ward with 9,000 people, how would that look like from your perspective, from workload? How effective do you think that you could be of a representative if you had, an additional 2,500 constituents or something like that? Ask them, does the does council function with its current size, right? Do they think it would be better with fewer or more councillors, right? So they are certainly part of the process. We are fortunate that we, for the most part, use a process in Canada that is independent. But asking them, how they view their roles, I think is something that is important as well. Question here from Eric: how does the mission mandate of the town shape the recommendation? In best organizational design, the form follows function. Does this principle apply to this work? So that's a great question, Eric. For the most part, the review follows legal principles and legislative principles. So with that said, that's not to say that there's no consideration of the town's strategic plan or some of the value statements that the town has or ethics. But I think that there is some external considerations that need to be weighed and met. So some of the principles that are given to us from the Carter case and some of the guiding legislation here about what is possible to change, what is not, what is in scope, and what isn't. So definitely appreciate that, Eric. That's a fantastic question. I don't know, Julie, if there's anything you want to sort of add to that maybe your lane as well as mine here.
No, I think you answered that really well. I would say that everything is taken into consideration, and knowing that we've never really undergone this process before. So I would say that we're really trying to ensure that the awards reflect the balanced population sizes, and also accommodates for any current realities and future growth. But honestly, I really think that you've really captured everything really well, Zach, in your presentation and in all of the great questions that everybody has asked. So yeah.
Excellent. Thanks. No, thanks
That's
very
great,
much,
Eric.
Eric.
Thank you.
That's great.
Everybody's wondering the same thing, so it's better that everybody just asks their questions, and then this video is going to be a permanent recording. We'll make sure that it's on the project page under Speak Up Lincoln, so you can come back and view this video at any time, and we'll make sure that it's either up shortly tomorrow or at least before the end of the week for sure.
Mhm. Yeah, definitely. I mean, and this is one of the things. This is a process that is new and different to a lot of people. So, it's one of those things to say there is no question that's a bad one. So, definitely appreciate that, Eric. Yeah, there's a lot of important decisions to be made. So, taking the time to fully understand the process is definitely a prudent one. So, thank you very much for that, Eric. I think we're getting close to time. We had until about 7 o'clock tonight. We have a few minutes left. I'm not sure if anyone has any last minute questions or thoughts that they would like to share. Now is the time. But with that said, if you have any questions beyond tonight, always feel free to reach out to the clerk's office. They can forward questions to us. We're happy to chat further about this. As I mentioned, this is not the last word. It says we're getting to the end of the project, but there still is opportunity to share your insight. Thank you, Jane and David. Appreciate that. Take care.
So I think that takes us to the end, Zach.
Okay, excellent. Well, with that, I will just say one final thank you. Thank you for coming tonight. Thank you for the fantastic questions. Thank you for being engaged in the governance of your town. So thank you very much, and wish you all well.
Thanks so much, Zach, and thanks everyone for attending. Have a good evening.
Take care. Bye.